Welcome to Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course. In this video, we're going to learn all of the intermediate skills that will help you reach the intermediate level with Excel. Let's get started. So in the previous video, Excel for Beginners, the complete course, we created this spreadsheet, which is an employee list. It's got information about hourly wage, taxable income, etc. If you haven't watched Excel for Beginners, the complete course, I highly recommend that you do that. But for now, let's take our skills to the next level. In this first segment of Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course, we're going to learn how to maintain a large worksheet or spreadsheet in Microsoft Excel. So you can see my employee list is getting pretty long, and as the company grows, it's just going to get longer and longer. The bigger this spreadsheet gets, the more rows of data, and maybe perhaps even the more columns of data that I add to this spreadsheet, the harder it could be for me to really understand the data and digest it. So let's look at some tools that can help us to focus in exactly on the data that we want to see. The first tool that we have for this is the zoom options. And as you can see, right now I'm on the Home tab, Home ribbon, but if I switch to the View tab, there's a Zoom group. And in that group, I have three options at least to look at. So I'm going to click on Zoom. Right now, I'm zoomed to 100% magnification, but I could easily switch to 200% magnification. If I do that and click OK, the data looks much bigger. Now, the data itself hasn't changed. I haven't changed the font size here. All I've done is I've zoomed in, just like using a zoom on a camera. Switching back to the View tab, I want you to see that there are other options on that Zoom button. I can switch to 75% magnification or 50. Let's go with 50. So that's going to make it much further away. There's also some custom zoom options. So if I choose custom zoom, I can set the magnification, let's say at 350%. I tap enter on the keyboard or click OK, and that custom zoom is activated. Now there is one other option here in the Zoom button, and that is Fit to Selection. Let me demonstrate how this works. I'm going to click this button here to quickly go back to 100% magnification. That's a very handy button, as you'll often want to do that. And I'm just going to use this scroll bar to scroll to the left. Let's say that the data that I really want to focus on is on my first employees, maybe the first 15 employees. So I'll just click and drag to highlight from cell A1 through cell F16. Let's say I'm not interested in the tax rate and this other data here or the chart. So just with this range selected, I can now click on that zoom button and choose Fit Selection. Click OK. And now, specifically the range that I selected is now zoomed in on perfectly so that it fits within the Excel window. Now you'll notice that there's also a zoom to selection option here. So this is a quick button that you can click. So that way, instead of clicking here on zoom and choosing fit selection, you can just click this quick button. So these three buttons in the Zoom group can really help us to focus in on exactly the parts of the spreadsheet that we need to work in right now. Now, if I hover my mouse over the Zoom button, you'll notice that there's a statement here that says, for zoomier zooming, use the controls in the status bar. So what is that referring to? It's referring to this zoom here. So if I just need to quickly zoom in or zoom out, this may be a quicker way to do that. I can just go down here, click and drag that bar to the right or to the left to quickly zoom in or out. You can also simply click and it will jump to that point of zoom. You can click the plus sign and the minus sign as well. And if you click on the zoom percentage here in the lower right, you can change it quickly to something else and it's put into effect. For now, I'm going to switch back to 100% zoom. And let's look now at another tool that we have to help us look at specific parts of a spreadsheet or worksheet when we're trying to maintain a large worksheet. And what I want to show you is called Split. Now, if you don't see Split on your View ribbon, when you click on the View tab here in this area, what you need to do is go up to the Quick Access toolbar and click this button to customize it. You can also right-click to customize the Quick Access toolbar. Either way, you want to get to this point where it says More Commands. And I'm going to go up here, switch it from Popular Commands to All Commands, and then I'll browse down until I find Split. Okay, there it is, Split Window. I'm going to select it and then click Add, and that will add the Split Window tool to my Quick Access toolbar. It is also possible to customize the ribbon itself. So if I choose the same exact command, Split Window, There it is. I could add it to a custom group. So for example, I could just click here on New Group, Custom, and I'll rename that, and I'll just call it Split. Click OK. So now I've got a custom group, and I'll add Split Window to that Split custom group. I'll just click the Add button. Now it's added there. I'll click OK. And now on my View tab, View ribbon, there's my custom group, Split, and the Split Window option. Okay, now that I've got this tool, what does it do? Why would I want to use Split Window? Let's say I'm trying to compare the hours worked by our employees that were hired first and compare their hours worked to those who were more recently hired. It might be hard to do that. I might have to keep browsing down the spreadsheet and then back up. So instead, I'm going to split the window. I'm just going to click here on row 16 for this employee, Nestor. With row 16 highlighted, I can click on that split button and look what it's done. Excel has added a horizontal line above the row that I had selected. If you look to the right, you can see that now I have two scroll bars, one for everything above that horizontal line and one for everything below that horizontal line. So I can use that scroll bar to scroll down. I can use this one to scroll down as well. And so this way, I could very easily look at the bottom of my spreadsheet and the top of the spreadsheet at the same time. Now, what if I regret where I put that split window line? Well, that's not a problem. I can just put my mouse over it, click and hold the click, and then drag the line up or down, and it's moved. Now, there are spreadsheets and situations in which you might want to split the window not with a horizontal line, but with a vertical line. What if I have 15, 20, 30 different columns of data, and they're obviously not all visible here in my spreadsheet all at once? Yes, I could zoom out or do some other techniques to look at that data. I could scroll a lot, but sometimes it's just better to put in a split windows vertical line. So let's look at that. First, I'm going to go up here to the split window group that I created, this custom group, and I'm going to click this button. It's a toggle button. So clicking it removes the split windows line that I had added. Next, I'm going to go to column F, and I'll just click on F, and then I'll click on my split button again, and Excel adds a vertical line to the left of the column that I had selected. Here it is, and now I can scroll here at the right and here at the left. Once again, if I want to move the line, I can. Just put my mouse right on it, and then click and drag to move the line. If I want to get rid of the split window line completely, yes, I can click this toggle button, but there's also an easier way. If you just double click on a split window line, it will disappear. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, what if I want to split the window vertically and horizontally at the same time? Is that possible? And the answer is yes. What you would do is click not on a column or row number, but on an actual cell. So let's try cell D15. I select that cell and then I click split, and look what happened. I got a vertical line to the left and a horizontal line above, and now my window is split 4 different ways. I can scroll this way, I can scroll this way, and I can scroll using this scroll bar and this one here. I'm going to undo that and just point out that there is also a keyboard shortcut. If you click on a cell and then hold the Alt key, tap W and then S. And that is the shortcut to clicking this button here. So I hope that you'll check out the split window tool when you're working with very large worksheets. I'm going to double click on the 2 split window lines to remove them. And let's look now at another tool that we have to help us manage large worksheets. You know, as I'm working in this spreadsheet, the further down the spreadsheet I get, the easier it is to forget what these numbers represent. And of course, I can remind myself by scrolling all the way back up to the top to see row number 1. But there's a wonderful tool that helps us to not have to do that. Let's take a look. If you go to the View tab here in the Window group, you should have an option to freeze panes. If you click that button, you should see 3 options: freeze panes, freeze top row, or freeze first column. In most cases, this is what you want, freeze top row. So I'll click that. You probably noticed a horizontal line was added right underneath row number 1. Now, as I scroll down the spreadsheet, you can see that row number 1 always stays visible. This is so valuable when you're working in a giant spreadsheet with lots and lots of rows. You're going to want to be able to see what that top row is, if it has column headings or titles that you want to be able to see. You can do a similar thing with the first column. So now as I scroll to the right, or if I tab over to the right, I can always see which employee ID I'm working with. Now in this case, it would be much more useful to be able to see the employee name, not just the number. The first thing I'm going to do is unfreeze the panes that I currently had frozen. And then there's a couple of different ways that I could freeze columns A and B so that I can always see the name of the employees. I could select column C, the entire column, and then click freeze panes, and now everything to the left of the column I selected is frozen. It doesn't matter how far over I tab, I'll be able to see the employee ID number and name. I'm going to unfreeze that because what I'd really love is a combination of the two. I want row number 1 to be frozen and I want columns A and B to be frozen. To do that, I'm going to click here on cell C2. With that selected, I'm going to click freeze panes, and take a look. Row number 1 is always visible and columns A and B are always visible also. I hope you can see how useful that is. So far in this segment of Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course, we've looked at how to zoom to be able to see the data that we're most interested in. We've looked at how to split windows, again, to help us see what we want to see. And we've looked at how to freeze and unfreeze panes. Please keep in mind that each of these techniques, each of these tools, does nothing to change the actual data. No changes were made to the data itself. All we did is we changed how we see that data. Next, though, we are going to look at some techniques and tools that do change the nature of the data or the workbook and worksheets that we're working with. Let's start with how to add, name, and reorder worksheets. And keep in mind that worksheet is a synonym of spreadsheet. And you'll notice here in the lower left corner, I have right now 3 worksheets or spreadsheets, or sometimes they're just called sheets. Here's sheet 1. Here's sheet 2, which is completely blank. Here's sheet 3, also completely blank. When you're working in Excel, sometimes you may just see just one sheet. Other times, there will be multiple sheets. If you'd like to add more sheets into your workbook, you can just click this button here to get a new sheet, and a new sheet is added. And I could just click this button as many times as I want to, each time getting a new sheet. Now, I want to just emphasize how powerful this is. In Excel, you can hold a vast amount of information on just one worksheet or spreadsheet. But imagine having 2 sheets, 3 sheets, 6 sheets. The amount of data that you can store in one workbook, and a workbook is just the collection of all of the sheets that we have in the workbook. But the amount of data that you can store in one of these workbooks is just huge. Now you'll notice that my sheets didn't come in the proper order. For some reason, they came in out of order. That's okay. To put them back in the right order, all I have to do is click on a particular sheet, hold the click, and then drag it where I want it to be. I'll do the same thing with sheet 3. There we go. Now they're in numerical order. In addition to adding sheets and reordering those sheets, you can also name sheets. Let's look at how to do that. I'm going to click once on sheet 1. When I click once on a particular sheet, that sheet becomes the visible sheet. If I click on sheet 3, now that's the visible sheet. But what if I double click on sheet 2? If I double click on it, it highlights the name of that sheet and I can then overwrite it. So I'm going to call this 2022 employee list, and then I can tap enter on the keyboard. That's the new name of this particular sheet. If I double click on sheet 2, then I can name that 2023 employee list. Tap enter. So I would encourage you to get to the point where you use more than one sheet in a workbook, if it makes sense to do so. And it really is good practice to name or rename those sheets so that you and others that see your spreadsheet know what they're looking at. They understand what the data is. So double clicking on those sheet titles enables you to rename them. One more quick tip about spreadsheet names. If you right-click on the name of a spreadsheet, you can color code its tab. So I could make this one green, 2023, I could make it yellow, and this one will be 2024, I could make that one red. The next skill that you need to learn in order to help you maintain a large worksheet is how to name a cell, formula, and constant. In Excel for Beginners, the complete course, I showed you how to name a cell or a range of cells. But let's review how to name a cell. If I want to, I can select a cell that has numbers in it, data, or it could just be the text like this up here. By default, this is named C1, this is named C3, and you can see the name for a particular cell by looking here in the upper left corner in what's called the name box. So this right now is officially called C1. But if I want to change that, I can. With C1 selected, I can click to select C1 in the name box, and then I can type over it. I'll just type hourly wage. Now it's important not to have spaces in the name box. So just hourly wage, all one word. I tap enter on the keyboard, and now this cell is called hourly wage. The nice thing about that is I can now click in any cell, type equals hourly wage. Notice that it recognizes it, and I can even just double click there to enter whatever is in cell C1 into now cell K1. I can tap enter on the keyboard, and there it is. Now, as you use Excel more and more, you'll see how useful that can be. So that was a review of something you learned in Excel for Beginners, the complete course. Let's take it a couple of steps further. What if I would like to name not just a cell or a range of cells, but instead, what if I want to name a formula? Right now I have a formula in cell D76, and it looks like I need to change the formatting for that cell so it's not currency. But this cell, even though it looks like it has the number 70 in it, it actually has a formula, and you can see that here in the formula bar. Well, I would like to name that formula. Once I've done that, it will make it much easier to recreate that formula, to call it up at any time in any place in my workbook. To do this, you just need to click on the Formulas tab here in the Defined Names group. There's a button there that says Define Name. If you click that, you get a dialog box that opens up. Excel has automatically named this formula number of employees, and I think that's a good name for it. I could put a comment here if I wanted to, but I'm just going to click OK, and from now on, whenever I use this workbook, if I ever need to call up the number of employees, I don't have to recreate this formula. I can just refer to its name. So let's go here to the 2023 employee list. Maybe I want to, in cell B1, for example, I want to have the number of employees. So I'll just type equals and number, and you can see Excel is recommending number of employees. I'll just double click on that, tap enter, and that formula that I created in this first sheet, and I named it on the first sheet, I can easily execute it and use it here on the second sheet. Let's look at one other example of things that you can name in Excel. Again, I'm going to click on Define Name, and this time my example is going to be naming a constant. So for example, pi. Pi is a constant, 3.14, and on and on and on. Next, Excel wants to know what's the scope of this named constant that I'm going to add. Is it just for this workbook, or is it only for a particular sheet in the workbook? I'm going to say it's for the whole workbook. Again, I could put a comment in if I wanted to. Next, notice that it right now refers to cell D76, and I don't want that in this case. I don't want the item named pi to refer to any particular cell. Instead, I want it to refer to 3.14. I tap enter on the keyboard or click OK, and now I have a named constant. I can go to any sheet in this workbook, click on any cell, and type equals pi, and notice that there is a function already set up for that comes with Excel, but now there's also a named constant that I created. And I could double click on that, tap enter on the keyboard, and the constant is put into my spreadsheet. Now you can also define names for other types of constants. For example, let's say there's a teacher that teaches a particular class every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And maybe they find themselves constantly typing Monday, Wednesday, Friday into the spreadsheet. They could go in here and erase the sheet reference and the cell references and put in a left curly bracket, and in quotes, they could put in Monday, close quote, comma, another quote, Wednesday, another quote, comma, another quote, Friday, close quote, and the right curly bracket. Click OK. So now, anytime the teacher wants Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they can click on a particular cell, equals MWF, tap enter on the keyboard, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Okay, the final skill that I want to show you in this segment of the video is how to quickly enter today's date and time. When you're using a very large worksheet, and especially when you're sharing it with others, it may be important to record the last time that you edited a spreadsheet. So here on cell J1, I've clicked and I'm going to type last update, tap enter. I could double click between J and K to make sure the words fit within the column. And then here on cell K1, I'm going to click and I'm simply going to hold the control key on the keyboard and tap semicolon. And that quickly I have today's date in the cell. Now I can tap enter, or in my case, I want to tap tab to move over to L1. And here I'd like to put the time of day. It's a similar keyboard shortcut, Control, Shift, and then semicolon. Tap enter or tab. Now I've got my last update, the date for it, and the time for it. So in this segment of Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course, we've looked at several different strategies, tools, and techniques that will help you maintain a large worksheet. In this next segment of Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course, we're going to focus on working with multiple worksheets. Let's begin. In the previous segment, I showed you how to switch between sheets in your workbook, simply by clicking here on the tab for the sheet that you want to go to. In this segment, though, I want to also show you some keyboard shortcuts that make it even easier to switch between sheets. So here I am on the 2022 employee list sheet. If I want to move to the 2023 employee list sheet, all I have to do is hold the control key and tap the page down button. And then to go back, control page up. So if you have a page up, page down button, you can try that. Having said that, let's take a look at our next skill, which is how to edit the same cell in two different worksheets at a time, or even more than two. So let's say that as I'm working with this workbook, maybe I decide that I want to change the wording in some of these headings. I could certainly click here on E1, for example, and change it from taxable income to simply income, tap enter. But then I would have to do the same thing here on the 2023 employee list and any other sheet that has the same information. Of course, right now, they don't really have that information. Imagine that they do. So I'm going to undo this with Control Z, and I'll show you a faster way to edit the same cell on multiple spreadsheets. The trick is you go down here to the sheet name and tab, click on it, and then hold the Shift key and select the sheet the furthest to the right that you want to include. So maybe I want to include all of these sheets up to sheet 5. Now I can release the Shift button. Right now I have 5 sheets selected. Now I'll go up to E1 and change it from taxable income to just income. Tap enter on the keyboard. Now look, if I go to the 2023 employee list, it says income in E1. What about sheet 3? Same thing. Sheet 4 and sheet 5, but sheet 6 does not include that. So by selecting more than one sheet down here, you can just edit a cell or a range, and those edits will be applied on all of the selected sheets. Now, what if I want to do this, but with sheets that are not together? So maybe I want to edit cell A1 on this sheet and sheet 3 and sheet 5. How would I do that? Instead of holding the Shift key, I would hold the Control key, click on sheet 3, click on sheet 5. So I have these 3 selected. I can now release the Control key, and I'll click on A1. I'll change it to ID, tap enter. Now if I go to sheet 3, it'll say ID. Sheet 5 will also say ID, but the other sheets don't. The next skill that you need in this segment of Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course, is you need to know how to open and arrange multiple windows in an Excel workbook. So let's say I really do want to set up a 2023 employee list that's pretty similar to what I have for 2022. It would be nice, instead of having to click back and forth between the two, it would be nice to be able to see them side by side. To do this, I'm going to go up to the View tab and look in the Window group. There's a New Window button. And when I clicked on it, I can tell that something happened, but it's not entirely clear what it is that happened. If you look up here at the top of my window, you can see my title for this workbook, and it's got a 2 on it. That indicates that there are 2 windows open. And if I go down here to the Windows taskbar over Excel, you can see that there are now 2 windows. So at this point, I can take this second window, click on it, and drag it to the right. And if you're using a modern version of Microsoft Windows, you can pull that to the extreme right and then let go, and then select the other window, the original, and it will fill the left side of the screen. So now I have window 1 and window 2 both open at the same time. This window can have the 2022 list. This window could have the 2023 list. I could adjust the zoom levels if I want to, and I could just click and drag to highlight all of the data in this spreadsheet, hold Control and tap C to copy. And then here on my second sheet, I can click on A1, hold Control and tap V to paste. And it looks like it worked. I can double click between some of these columns to make sure that the data can fit within the columns. So that copy paste was much easier because I could see the two windows side by side. Now that I'm done with this second window, I can just X out of it, and that data, that information, that sheet, they still exist. They're just now in one window, not two separate windows. So you can see the two sheets now by clicking back and forth. Okay, so now that I've copy pasted the information from 2022 to 2023, I want you to see that there's another way I could have accomplished a similar thing. Let's say it's time to copy 2023 to 2024 to set up a new sheet called 2024. I could do that by right-clicking on the Sheet tab and choosing Move or Copy. And I would like to create it before Sheet 3, and I want it to be a copy, not just moving. I don't want to move this selected sheet. I want to copy it. So I have to check this box, click OK, and now I have an exact duplicate of this sheet, but here. And you can see the title is similar but not exact. So I can double click on that, delete out the characters that I don't need, and I can change it to be 2024. Tap Enter. That quickly, I've duplicated an existing sheet to create a new sheet. Now I want you to know that it's possible to do that not just from within the same workbook, but from one workbook to another workbook. So I could have opened another separate workbook and just selected it from this list and copied a sheet from this workbook into that other workbook. The other option is maybe you don't have another existing workbook that you want to copy and paste that sheet to. Instead, just create a new book from scratch right now. So I want to copy it to a new book, create a copy, click OK, and now I have a brand new workbook called Book 1. It hasn't even been saved yet, and it's got that one sheet that I copied from the other workbook. So this is a really powerful feature that we have in Excel, the ability to copy entire spreadsheets from one workbook to another workbook. Now I want to save this workbook. I'm going to call it Delete Me, because I don't really need it. I'll go ahead and save. And now that it's saved, I'm going to open up another tab, and I'm just going to put in some data here. It's not that meaningful of data, but I just want there to be something here in this new workbook that's not in the original workbook, and I'll save it once again. And now I'm going to switch back to my first workbook, the one that we've been working in for this entire video. I'm going to go here to Sheet 3. It's pretty much blank, and I'll just delete what's there by clicking and dragging to select it. And then on the Home tab, I'm going to go to the Editing group, and I'll just click here, Clear All. And what I want to do on this Sheet 3 is I want to demonstrate that it's possible to link between two workbooks. That second workbook that I created just a few minutes ago and this workbook that I've been working on for most of this video, I want to link the two together and pull data from one of those workbooks into another of the workbooks. And before I do this, I'm going to actually jump back to the newer workbook, and give me a minute, and I'm going to add some data into some of these cells. Give me a minute to do so, and then I'll resume the video. Now that I've added that data in, I'm going to go back to my original workbook, Sheet 3. Maybe I want to show the Monday totals, and I'll tab over. I'll double click between A and B to create some space. And here I want to add up all of the numbers from that first Monday on the other sheet. So here on cell B1, I'll type equals sum, left parenthesis, and then I'll just point my mouse pointer over the Excel symbol here on the taskbar. That shows me my two workbooks that I'm working with. So I'll go here to my Delete Me Excel workbook, and I'll just click and drag to highlight all of the Monday numbers. They happen to be sequential. I'll tap Enter on the keyboard, and look, this formula that I've created is linked from this workbook to the Delete Me workbook. And you can see that when I click on B1. Here in the formula bar, let's look at what it says. Equals sum, that's typical. But then within parentheses, it says the name of the workbook, deleteme.xlsx. Then it also says which sheet the information is coming from and which cell references. It's a range in this case. So I have successfully linked two workbooks together. This original practice file that I've been using for most of the video and this brand new Delete Me workbook that I created a few minutes ago. When you do link two workbooks together, or even more than two, it does change what happens when you open your file. So I'm going to click Save, and I'll close out of this workbook. And I'm also going to close the Delete Me workbook. So now when I open up Excel, it could be later today, it could be next week, I can open up that same file again. This is my practice workbook that I've used for most of this video. But notice, because I linked this workbook to another workbook, I'm getting a security warning. Automatic update of links has been disabled. So because this workbook is connected to another, if that other workbook changes, if the data is changed or anything else that I'm linking, it's not being automatically updated in this workbook. And that's just for my own protection as I'm using Excel. If I want to, though, I can enable the content. So now the updates will come. But you have to make that decision each time you open up this workbook. Do you want to update the information from the linked workbook or not? Okay, so in this segment of Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course, we've looked at several different ways that you can work with multiple worksheets and even multiple workbooks. Before we move on to the next segment, I want to also point out that it is possible and actually pretty easy to create a summary worksheet that pulls in information, data from other sheets in your workbook. Let's look at how to do that. So here I have sheet 4, and I'm going to double click on it and just rename it to be called Summary Sheet. Tap Enter, and I'll delete out the data that's already there. By going up here, I'll choose Clear All, and I'm going to click and drag and move that summary sheet so that it's the first sheet in my workbook. You don't have to do it this way. It could be the last sheet or wherever you want to put it, but I can now design a summary sheet that pulls in information from the other sheets. So I'm going to type in number of employees in 2022, colon, I'll tap enter, number of employees in 2023, tap enter, total employee income, 2022, and I'll just stop there for now. I'm going to double click between A and B to make sure the data fits within the column. And then here in cell B1, I'm going to type equals, and I want to now pull in this data, this information from this other worksheet. So I'll just click on that worksheet, the total number of employees, and then I'm just going to click here on the total number of employees and then tap enter on the keyboard, and that data now is being pulled from 2022. Now in 2023, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to select a few of the names of employees, right click, delete, so the number will be different. So back in my summary sheet, the total number of employees in 2023 equals, and then I'll just click on the 2023 tab. I'll go down here to number of employees, click, tap enter on the keyboard, and the information is pulled over into my summary sheet. Let's do one more. Total employee income 2022 equals, and then I just click on the tab for the 2022 employee list spreadsheet. Here's the total income. I'll click on it, tap enter, and it's pulled over. So those are the basics for how to create a summary worksheet that draws attention to some of the key data within the workbook. So in this section, we've looked at several different ways to work with multiple worksheets and workbooks in Microsoft Excel. In this next section of Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course, we're going to learn more about working with data in Excel. In this section of Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course, we're going to learn about some new ways to work with your data, including how to group your data and how to import data from other sources. I'm going to switch over to the 2023 employee list. Let's say I'm going to be using this spreadsheet next week for the purpose of simply figuring out the taxes to be paid by each person in the spreadsheet. In that case, it may not matter so much what each employee's hourly wage is or the total income. It's really all about the amount of taxes to be paid. So I may want to just group this data. Let's look at how it's done. First, you need to make sure that you're on the Data tab and that you've selected the right data in your spreadsheet. In this case, I clicked and dragged to highlight all of columns C, D, and E. You don't have to do that, but let's take a look at it. With that selected, on the Data tab, Data ribbon, in the Outline group, you should see the option to group. Now in my case, the group button didn't fit on the ribbon, so that's why I had to click this down arrow in order to show it. I click Group, and now column C, D, and E are all grouped. I do see a horizontal line above column C, D, and E and this minus sign, but other than that, it doesn't look like much has changed. But look what happens when I click the minus sign.
all three of those columns are collapsed. If I click the plus sign, they're revealed again. In addition to the minus sign and the plus sign, I can just click over here on 1 to collapse the group and 2 to reveal it again. Now I'm going to hold Control and tap Z a few times to undo this, because I want you to know that I didn't have to select the entire columns. I could have simply selected C1 through E1 and still gone to Outline, Group, and then selected Columns. I want to group the columns. Click OK, and the result is really exactly the same. I even could have selected other parts of the columns, like let's say C12 through E12, Outline, Group, and selected Columns. Click OK, and again the results are the same. I used Control Z to undo all of that again, and let's quickly take another look. After selecting part of my data, going to Outline, Group, again I'm going to choose Columns in this case. What if I want to then ungroup these columns? With the same range selected, I can go to Outline, Ungroup, again select the same option, either rows or columns, click OK, and then those columns are no longer grouped. I'm going to move to Sheet 5 to show you that sometimes it makes more sense to group rows rather than columns. So I'm just adding a little bit of data here, and with that data added, now I'm going to select B3 through B5. With that range selected, again, I'm going to go to the Data tab, Outline Group, and select Group. This time, though, I'm going to group rows. Click OK. And now, instead of a horizontal line, I get a vertical line here at the left. I have a minus sign. If I click it, it becomes a plus sign so that I can collapse and expand or reveal those rows. Now watch what happens if I do the same thing with another range of data. Having selected it, I'll go to Outline, Group, Rows. So now I have two minus signs, two vertical lines, and I can collapse or reveal one or both. Now that I have two though, look up here. In the upper left, I still have a 1 and a 2, but look what happens. When you click 1, both the groups are collapsed. If I click 2, both are expanded or revealed. So grouping and ungrouping is a key skill when you're using Microsoft Excel. It's a great way to temporarily hide and then reveal data so that you can visually take in the spreadsheet the way you would like to. Next, let's look at how to import data from another source into Microsoft Excel. I'm going to jump to sheet number 6, and I'll select cell A1. And then here on the Data tab, let's look over here at the left at the Get and Transform Data group. There we have Get Data, and when you click on that, there's several different options of sources from which you can get data. In many cases, the most common option is here, from File. So let's say you have a file on your computer, like another Excel workbook, and you want to import that data into this workbook, and specifically this worksheet. You could simply click that button, and a dialog box opens up, enabling you to select the workbook that you want to import. So I'm going to import that workbook that we used in a previous video, Excel for Beginners, the complete course. Hopefully you watched that. And this dialog box that's popped up shows me the sheets that make up the workbook that I've selected. I have 3 numbered sheets and then one called Taxes Owed. I can select one of them to get a preview of the data. Sheet 2, Sheet 3, those seem to be empty, and then Taxes Owed. I'll select Sheet 1, and then I'll come down here and click Load. And the spreadsheet that I selected has been imported into my current workbook. The process is fairly similar if you need to import data from a different type of file, like a CSV file. CSV files are in some ways similar to Excel files, but they're comma-separated values files. The pieces of data in CSV files are separated from each other with the use of commas. So importing them this way is much more likely to be successful than just copy-pasting the data in. So those are 2 of the most common file types that you want to import into Microsoft Excel. But you can see there are many other options, including PDFs. Those of you that use Microsoft Access might also benefit from this option of getting data from a database. You can see the top option there is to get data from a SQL Server or SQL Server database, but there's also an option for Microsoft Access database and many others. One other exciting option listed here is from online sources. And again, if you're familiar with these options and know that you have access to them, these can be some great options for you. The final skill that I need to show you in this section on more ways to work with data is how to insert a hyperlink to another document or file. So I'm going to click here on the 2024 employee list. And let's say I would like to link to a PDF or a Word document or whatever it might be, even a PowerPoint presentation or a sound recording. First, I'm going to want to put some sort of text or data into the cell where I want the hyperlink to exist. So maybe I'll just type something like learn more. Then I'll select that cell and go to the Insert tab. In the Links group, I can just click Link, and I get a dialog box that pops up, and there's lots of different link types that I could create. If you want to learn more about these, please watch my other videos on this topic. But in this case, I just want to link to an existing file or web page. So I'll select that, and it took me to the current folder, but I could use these options here and here to navigate my computer and find, let's say, a spreadsheet that I want to link to, or maybe a Word document. Let's try that. I'm going to select a Microsoft Word document and a PowerPoint presentation. I'll pick this one here, click OK. Now, if someone clicks on the first hyperlink, it's going to open my other Excel workbook that I linked to. This link should open the Microsoft Word document, and this one should open the PowerPoint presentation. Keep in mind there are other options for things that you can link to, including sounds, videos, and more. So in this section of the video, we've learned how to group data, how to ungroup data, how to import data from another source, and how to create hyperlinks to other documents and files that we can access from within our Excel worksheets. In the next segment, we're going to take a look at some advanced chart skills that go beyond what I showed in the Excel for Beginners complete course. In this section of Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course, we're going to review how to create a chart in Excel, and then you'll learn how to manipulate the chart, add some other detail to it, and make some other adjustments to the chart. In the Excel for Beginners, the complete course video, I showed you how to create a simple chart. And here I am on the 2023 employee list sheet, and I'm just going to click on that summary chart that I created, and I'll tap delete on the keyboard to remove that chart. Let's create a new one. There are a few different ways to go about creating charts in Excel. Let's look at a couple of those. I'm just going to click and drag to highlight the data that I would like to chart. In this case, it's just the names of the employees and their hourly wages. So I'm clicking and dragging to select all of the data all the way down the spreadsheet. But I'm going to stop short of selecting these words at the bottom of this range of data. I don't need the words totals, average, highest, lowest. I don't need any of that in my chart. So I'm going to stop just short of those. With that data selected, I can go to the Insert tab and look in the Charts group. Now, in modern versions of Excel, you may have a Recommended Charts button. If you click there, Excel will recommend what it thinks are the most likely charts that you'll be looking for based on the data that you've selected. So it's recommending a clustered column or a Pareto chart. And you can just simply select the one that displays the data in the way you want to display it. I think this Pareto chart is great. I'm going to click OK. And my data here at the left in these two columns has been charted here at the right. And I can click and drag to move that chart where I want it to be. I can even resize it by using one of the handles in the corners of the chart. And I can make it the size that I want and put it in the location that I want. Now let's try it again, but this time when I go to recommended charts, let's not take Excel's advice. Excel is limiting me just to two options. If I click here on all charts, you can see that there are bar charts that I can select from. There's line charts, pie charts, column charts, area charts. We just have lots and lots of different chart options. Some of these are very exciting and interesting, and I might not have ever tried these or known about them if I had only looked at the recommended charts. Now, the more you use Excel and work with data, the better you'll get at deciding which chart matches your purpose. Some of these charts look very interesting and informative, but really may not be. For example, a line chart may not make much sense when you're talking about individual employees and the different wages they make. Line charts tend to be a little better, though, when talking about change over time. Similarly, this pie chart is not going to be a good way to display the data about the different hourly wages of the employees. But I love that you can get a preview of most of these chart types and kind of test it out to see if it will serve your purposes. In addition to using the recommended charts button and perhaps switching to all charts, if you pretty well know what chart type you want, you can just skip the recommended charts button and go straight to the exact chart that you want. Maybe this one, for example. So I'm going to resize that one and put it over to the side. And I want to show you one other quick way that you can turn selected data into a chart. With a range of data selected, you can hold the Alt key and tap the F1 key on your keyboard, and Excel should automatically create a chart out of the data that you have selected. In my case, it's exactly the same as the previous chart I made, so I'm just going to click on it and delete it out. I don't need two of those. Now, once you have your chart or charts on the spreadsheet, you can select the chart, and you'll see we get two new tabs above the ribbon, Chart Design and Format. Let's take a look at Chart Design. Using the Chart Design ribbon, I can actually change the chart type. If I'm not happy with a Pareto chart, I can click here and switch to something else, like a pie chart. In my case, this would be a great mistake. So I'm going to go up here and click the Undo button to bring back my Pareto chart. I like that better. But there will be times when you change your mind on the chart, and you can do that here on the Chart Design tab, here with this button, Change Chart Type. Excel also gives me some handy chart styles that I can quickly apply to my chart. So just with the click of a button, I can change the look and feel of my chart. Now, if you don't think this is important, think again. One of the main purposes of a chart in Excel is to display the data that you have here in numbers and text, but in a much more visual way. So if you can make the data look more interesting or convey more data, it could very well be extremely important that you make the right chart styles choices. I kind of like how this looks with the black background, so I'm going to keep it that way. If you want, you can also adjust the colors in your chart. So right now I have the Colorful Palette 1 selected, but I could switch to Colorful Palette 2, and you can see there's some slight adjustments there. Or I could go to Monochromatic. There's just lots of different color adjustments you can make to your chart. To the left of the Change Colors button, I have a Quick Layout button, and I can click there to make some adjustments to the chart layout. So here's what I have now, but if I switch to this, you can see that there are some adjustments. Some numbers are appearing here across the bottom, but there's so many of them they don't fit and they overlap, so that may not be a good choice to switch to this layout. But it lists here for you what is included in this layout. Here's Layout 3. Again, I don't like that, so I'm going to stick with the first layout. Next, let's look at how to edit chart titles. Right now, this chart is just called Chart Title. I'm going to double click on it and highlight the text, and I'll change this to Pareto Chart. Now, what if you don't even have a chart title associated with your chart? You can fix that by going here on the Chart Design tab. Here at the left, you can click Add Chart Element and choose Chart Title. You can see the options, No Chart Title, Above Chart, or Centered Overlay. I'm happy with the title the way it is. Also in that same button, the Add Chart Element button, we can also change how the axes are handled. Do I want to switch the chart to be primary horizontal or primary vertical? You can see the differences there. There are also other axis options here. We can change the axis titles. Do I want the axis title primary horizontal or primary vertical? Again, you can see the differences. In this case, I'm going to go with primary vertical, because people may not know what these dollar amounts actually mean. But now that I have this axis title in place, I can triple click on it to highlight all of the text, and then I can type hourly wage. It feels kind of weird to type vertically like this, but when you're done, just click away, and now I have titled the vertical axis. And I'm sure you can see how this improves the chart. It makes it much more understandable, and it just conveys the information better. We have other chart elements that I hope that you'll explore. In the case of my chart, a lot of these options are just going to clutter it up and make it harder to read and understand. So I'm not going to do this. But if you want to add anything else to your chart, this Add Chart Element button is a great option. There is one more chart element that I want to draw your attention to though, and that's the Legend chart element. In some cases, this will add just the information that you need. So for example, here it added a legend showing that the blue represents hourly wage. So that can be helpful. And if there are multiple colors in your chart, that legend might be crucial to help people understand what they're looking at. Let's look now at the other tab that appeared once I created my chart and selected it. It's the Format tab. If I click there, I get even more visual elements that I can use in my chart. I can put in a shape fill. I'm not so happy with that change, so I'm going to hold Control and tap Z. But there are times when you want to make these kind of changes yourself rather than just using a predetermined chart design. So you can change the fill and the shape outline, shape effects. For example, I can add a glow around the edge of the chart or different elements of the chart. So definitely explore these visual elements and options on the Format tab. I can also change the style of the words in my chart. For example, this text here that says Pareto chart. If I select that text, I can go up here in the Word Art Styles group and I can change how that looks in the chart just by clicking on one of these options. I'm going to undo that and try a different one. Let's say I want it to have a reflection. I can choose it and look, that text now has a reflection. It's also possible to use this Format tab and ribbon to insert some shapes and also text boxes. So I'm going to click on text box and I'll click and drag to draw out a text box. Now, because of the choices I made about the background color of the chart, it's hard for you to see that text box at first. But when I release the mouse button, it appears and I can click in that text box and type. I'll just type in something like employee wages. And then I'll click away from the text box and I can always click back on the text box and stretch it out using the handles. And I can go to the edge of the text box to move it to where I want it to be. Clicking back on the chart and going back into the Format tab, there's also shapes that I can use in my chart. So I can click here on this shape, for example, this arrow, and then I could click and drag to draw the arrow to point out key information. If I then click on the arrow, I can go to the Shape Format button, and I could go here to Shape Outline and change the weight of the shape, the arrow in this case. I'm going to choose 4.5 point weight, and the arrow is much more visible now. I could also change its color to help draw attention to it a little better. So with those two options, I think the arrow is going to work a lot better with this chart. Now there's one other skill specific to charts that I want you to be able to do, and that is the numbers that you have in your chart can be formatted. So I could right click on the wage amounts here at the left, and I could go down here to Format Axis. I get a panel that opens up at the right, and here I can put in what is the minimum number and what is the maximum number. So right now the maximum is 35, even though nobody is making $35 an hour. I could lower that to 34 and it adjusts the chart. Or I could raise it maybe to 60. Tap enter and you can see how the chart is adjusted. So it's all about displaying data the way you want it to look. I'm going to put this back to 35, but then maybe I can change the minimum to be 10. I tap enter and the chart is adjusted. I could do the same thing with the percentages here at the right, just by right-clicking and formatting the axis. Okay, now that you know all of those chart skills and techniques, let's look at a few bonus elements that you can add, not specifically to your chart, but really you could add these anywhere in the spreadsheet, including on a chart. For example, you could click Insert and Illustrations to bring in an image. I'll click here on Pictures, and I could just insert an image that's on my computer, or I could pull from stock images, or from online pictures. Let's try online pictures. I'm just going to do a search for a $sign. Here's one. I can then click on it and insert, and now I've got a graphic image that I can resize. I can move it to where I want it to be, including possibly on my chart, maybe there. Just like I inserted this text box here on the chart, I can also insert a text box even without having a chart. So I could just click here, expand the text box if I want to, click in it and type. And then I could click on the very edge of the text box to move it to where I want it to be. This text in the text box is just floating on top of the data. It's not going to affect the cells. It doesn't exist in a row or a column. It's just floating on top. In addition to inserting text boxes, you can also insert headers and footers, signature lines, and word art. Let's put in some word art. I'll click to select that particular style, and I'll change the text to something like that. Having selected the text, I can change the font size. to whatever I want it to be. And then similar to my basic text box, I can click on the very edge of this text box and drag it exactly where I want it to be in my spreadsheet. There's one other similar example that I want you to know about, and that is if you click on Insert, in addition to word art, we also have an illustration that's called Smart Art. If you click on that, it brings up several collections of smart graphics that you can insert onto your spreadsheets. Here you'll find things like org charts or organization charts that show maybe the owner or CEO, and then how everyone else in the organization connects to each other. Supervisors, managers, coworkers, etc. We have a matrix option, we have a pyramid, process, smart art, lists, and so much more. I'm going to go back to the hierarchy options to insert an org chart. I'll click OK, and it appears here, but I can just type using these bulleted lists. There's CEO, department manager, employee 1, and then I can put employee 2 and 3. And of course, normally you would probably put names instead of just titles like this. If you need more than this, you can just tap Enter on the keyboard and you get another Smart Art element. I can change the indentation to adjust the Smart Art the way I want to or need to. And you can also click and drag to do that as well. If you want to learn more about Excel Smart Art, watch my other videos on that subject. But at this point, I'm going to close out of that wizard that was there, and I'm just going to click and drag to move my org chart off to the side, because at this point, we've looked at all of the key advanced chart skills that you need in this Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course. In the next section of the video, you're going to learn more about how to work with data lists, including how to use data forms. In this section of Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course, we are going to learn more skills related to working with data lists in Excel. In the Excel for Beginners complete course, I showed how to create a list of data by clicking on a cell and simply typing. You can then tap the Tab key to move to the right and type again, tab over, and continue typing. You can also tap Enter on the keyboard to move down, and if Excel can tell that you're creating a list of data, when you tap Enter on the keyboard, instead of just moving down one, it will often move to the left so that you can continue entering records in this data list. And I can just keep tabbing over, typing, and tapping Enter to create the next record. In this Excel for Intermediate Users complete course, I want to help you take this process to the next level. And we're going to do it by using a data form. So I'm going to switch to the 2022 employee list by clicking down here on its tab, and now I can see our employee list of 70 employees. Now it would be fine, of course, to create this list the way I've already shown you, just by clicking on a cell, typing, tapping Enter, and typing in the information manually that you want to include in your spreadsheet. Now let's look at an alternative. Let's move up here to the Quick Access toolbar. And I'm just going to click here on this symbol to customize the Quick Access toolbar, which is this section here. It's a toolbar that helps you have quick access to the tools and options that you use most often, or for tools and options that you don't want to have to dig for by going to tabs and ribbons and groups and all of that. So I'm going to click on this button here to customize the Quick Access toolbar. When I click that, there's all these options that I can add to the Quick Access toolbar or remove. But if you go down here almost to the very bottom where it says More Commands, you can click and you get this dialog box that pops up that will help you to customize it even more. By default, Excel took me to a list of popular commands that I could add to my Quick Access toolbar. Here at the right, I can see what I already have on the Quick Access toolbar. But I'm going to switch from popular commands to all commands, and I'm going to browse down until I see a command called form. I'm going to select that and then click Add. So now I should have a new button on my Quick Access toolbar called Forms. I'll click OK, and it's added here at the top. Now all I have to do is make sure I've clicked somewhere inside my data list or range of data, and then go up here and click on the Forms button. Now look what I get when I do that. I get this nice interface that is clean and pretty simple and is going to enable me to do data entry in a safer and in many cases faster way. So imagine instead of having 70 employees, what if I had 5,000 employees or 500 employees? Would I really want to be typing and tabbing over and hitting enter the way I've shown to create such a huge list? I may not want to. Data forms like this can help ensure that you're more careful and that the data that you're entering is more safely added into the data list. So I can simply click this New button to add a new employee. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to close the data form, because if I'm going to use it to add additional data, I need to make sure that there's some room in the spreadsheet for the data to be added. So you can see after record number 70, I have my totals, average, highest, lowest, number of employees. That's all at the bottom of the spreadsheet. I'm going to click and drag to highlight that range of data, and I'm just going to put my mouse at the very edge of that selected range. I'll click and hold the click, and I'm just going to drag this over to the side here so that it's out of the way. And you'll notice that my data has not really been affected. My formulas are still looking in the right places to produce the results that I asked them to produce. Okay, so now with some space below my last record, once again, I'm going to click in my data list anywhere and then click on my Forms button. And now let's add a new employee. I'm going to click on New. We're going to hire employee number 71, and then I'll tap Tab on the keyboard and type in the name of this employee, which is Amanda. I'll tap Tab again. Hourly wage, $25 an hour. Tap Tab. Hours worked, so far, 0. And now I can tap Enter on the keyboard, and Amanda is added to my list of employees. Notice what my form does. It clears out, and now I can quickly add the next employee, number 72. Tab. This is Spencer with an hourly wage of 28. I tap Tab. Hours worked. Maybe he's already gotten a few hours, so I'll put in 3. I tap Enter on the keyboard. Now I'm going to close this data form for a minute just by clicking Close, and you can see the different results for Amanda and Spencer. Because Amanda hasn't worked any hours, these formulas aren't able to calculate, and so I'm just getting a dash, or in some cases you may get error messages or zeros here. But what I've shown you is how you can add records to your data lists by using a data form. This is a great feature in Excel. Now, this same data form can be used to help you find records that have already been put into Excel, and then it can help you edit them. So for example, let's say I know I need to edit the information about employee 25. There are a couple of ways I could quickly jump to employee 25. One would be to use this scroll bar. I can just click and drag, and notice here it's telling me which record I'm on. So here's 25, and we can see Ann and her hourly wage and hours worked. Another way to quickly jump to a record is to click on Criteria. Maybe I need to see the record of employee 39. I tap Enter on the keyboard, and I'm shown the record of employee 39. Now this works not just for ID. I could type in name. Let's try Tanner. But before I enter that data, I probably will need to clear out the ID number. So let's take out the 39, and then here in name, I'm going to type Tanner and tap Enter, and the form has helped me quickly find employee 65, who's named Tanner. Here's his hourly wage and hours worked. So by using this scroll bar or this criteria button, we can quickly find a record. If there's more than one result that matches the search that we've just done in criteria, we can click Find Next. In my case, there is no other Tanner listed. I could also use Find Previous. Once we've found the record that we're looking for, we can make adjustments. Tanner deserves a raise. Let's move his raise up to $28 an hour. And you can see Tanner here in my list. When I tap Enter on the keyboard, his hourly wage is updated to 28. So in many cases, when you're working with a big spreadsheet of data with a giant data list, using this Forms option can be a great way to add new records to your list, as well as to find records that you need to work with, and then also to edit them. I'm going to close the form. The next skill that I want to make sure that you know that relates to working with data lists is how to sort the data. Right now, my data is sorted by employee ID number, but I could change that. I'm just going to click somewhere in my data, and then there are two basic places you can go to sort your data. You could go to the Home tab and look over here in the Editing group. You should have a Sort option, Sort A to Z, Sort Z to A. For me, that's all condensed down to this symbol here and my arrow. So I could click and then click Sort A to Z, and notice that my data table has been sorted based on the cell that I had selected. So I had selected one of the names in my data list, and so now the entire data list is sorted based on name. Adrian's first, and notice that the rest of the data followed along with Adrian. She used to be the 13th record, now she's the first record, and her employee ID has followed her wage, taxes owed, all of that has followed along with her name. I'm going to hold Control and tap Z to undo that, because I want you to see the other place you can find the sort options. Here above the ribbon, I can click on the Data tab, and this will also give me Sort A to Z, Sort Z to A, and a Sort button. So let's try, instead of sorting by employee name, what about sorting by hours worked? That might tell me something important. So I'm going to click anywhere in the hours worked column, and then I could click A to Z. That would sort from the lowest number to the highest number, or I could sort Z to A. Now I get the highest number to the lowest number. So I can see that Luis and Alvaro have worked the most out of all of these employees. And again, when the data in this column is sorted, the data in the adjacent columns follow along, they come along for the ride with the data that's in column D. So you're not messing up your data. So we've looked at both sort A to Z and sort Z to A. Now what about this generic sort button? If I click on that, I get a dialog box or a wizard that pops up that will help me to create a very specific and in some cases complicated sort. Because I had selected a cell in the hours worked column, that's currently listed as my first sort level, but I could change that. I would like to sort the employees first by their name, so this name column is going to be my first priority for sorting. And then what is the sort going to be based on? Is it going to be based on the cell values? In other words, what's actually in the cells? Or is it going to be based on the cell colors or the font colors or a conditional formatting icon? So these are all interesting options, but the option that you'll use most often is this one, cell values. Next, do I want this to be a Z to A sort or an A to Z sort? It's also possible to sort based on a custom list. For example, months of the year, days of the week, you can sort in that way. But for now, I'm going to cancel, and I'm going to switch this to A to Z. I want to sort first alphabetically based on name. Next, I can add a second level to my sort, because I may have more than one person with the same first name. So first I'm going to sort by name, and then second, let's say by number of hours worked. Again, cell values, and maybe I want to switch this to largest to smallest. I click OK, and now my data is all reorganized based on the first name, and if there are any ties, then the employee that worked the most will be listed above the other employee or employees. So that's how you can sort records based on a single level or multiple levels of sorting. Okay, finally, we're going to look at another way to use and organize your data in an Excel spreadsheet, and that is filter. You'll find filter on the Home tab here in the editing group in the same area where we have sort. Here it is, filter. But you can also get to filter here on the data tab in the sort and filter group, and that's where I want to use it. In order to create my filter in Excel, I'm going to first click and drag to select the column headings that matter to me. So in this spreadsheet, it's ID through taxes to be paid. With all of those headings selected, I'm going to click on filter, and it looks like almost nothing happened. But if you look closely, there's some little buttons with arrows on them that have been added here to my column headings. Now I can click on one of those buttons, let's say hourly wages, and I get a series of checkboxes that I can use to filter out data that I don't need to see right now. So by default, everything is selected, everything is visible. But if I uncheck this Select All button, now I can select just the data that I'm interested in. So what if I only want to see employees that have an hourly wage of either $12 an hour or $13 an hour? I can check just those two options, click OK, and now my data list that used to have 72 records only appears to have 12 or 13. Now, the first time you do this, it may feel like you've ruined your data, you've lost some important information, but that's actually not the case. If you look here at the left, you'll see that some row numbers are skipped, and that's not really possible in Excel to completely delete row numbers. Instead, they're just temporarily filtered out or hidden so that I can focus in on exactly the data I'm interested in. In my case, employees that make $12 or $13 an hour. Now notice my filter button here at the top, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see this better, but instead of having an arrow on the button, it now has a filter symbol. And so that tells me that a filter has been applied based on the information in this column. Now I could filter again if I wanted to. I could place a filter, let's say, on hours worked. So in addition to hourly wage of 12 or 13, maybe I only want to see employees that worked these amounts of hours. I could click OK, and now I have 2 filters applied. So filters are a great way to take a giant spreadsheet and really focus in on exactly the data that you're looking for by applying 1 or more filters. Now, if you want to remove those filters or clear them, you can go to that same sort and filter group and click clear. And now those filters are removed, but we still have the filter buttons here so that we can quickly filter again. If you want to get rid of those buttons completely, you can click the filter button and they're removed. But I'm going to put them back so that I can show you how to create a custom filter. Here in hourly wage, I'm going to click on the filter button to show you that in addition to filtering the data based on these exact numbers, I can also click on number filters and filter the data so that only employees with hourly wages greater than, let's say, 13 are shown. And I could put another criteria here, but I'll just click OK. And now you can see that employees that make $13 or less are not included in this list. So that's an option. I'm going to clear that out. We have several other built-in number filters that we can use: greater than or equal to, less than, between 2 numbers, or equals. It has to equal exactly a certain number or word. You can also filter so it shows only the top 10, the above average, below average, and then at the bottom of that list of options, we have a custom filter. This is how you can customize a filter. Notice again that I'm filtering based on hourly wage, and maybe I want to filter so that it is greater than or equal to 13. So 13 will be included this time, and it's less than or equal to 16. I click OK. And my data is filtered based on those selections. To edit that, I could go back into the filter, activate the custom filter again, and you can see my work from before. This time, I'm going to switch it to OR. So I want to filter so that only items greater than or equal to 13 are included, or results that equal exactly 11. I click OK, and that filter is applied. So in this section of Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course, we've looked at how to use data forms to add records to a list, to find records and edit them in a list. We've also looked at how to sort and filter your data in Microsoft Excel. In the next section of Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course, you're going to learn how to document and audit a worksheet. In this section of Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course, we will learn how to document and audit a worksheet, including how to add comments, notes, how to use watch windows, and how to use the auditing feature in Excel. And I'm going to start by switching over to the 2024 employee list. And let's say I'm preparing this list for the coming year, and as I'm getting this spreadsheet ready, maybe I want to make sure I remember certain things, and also other people that may be using the spreadsheet with me will remember key points or data that needs to be updated or looked at or changed in some way. Well, we can use comments or notes to help us with that. So for example, I'm going to go down here to the record for Mari, and I'll just click there, and then I'll go up here to the Insert tab and choose Comment. I get a little pop-up here, and I can use this to start a conversation. And that really is the key difference between a comment and a note. A comment is meant to be part of a conversation with other people. So I'll add a little message here to start a conversation. So something like that, and then I can click this button to post that comment. Or, notice this tip, press Control and tap Enter as another way to post that comment a little faster. Now that I've posted that comment, if I have a coworker, a colleague that's using this same spreadsheet with me, that colleague could certainly go in to this text box to reply, and they could post that reply. Now, if I need to or want to, I could go in and delete a comment just by clicking on these 3 dots and choosing Delete Comment. If I feel like the matter is resolved, I could just go here to the original comment, click the 3 dots, and choose Resolve Thread. Once I've done that, the comment still exists and it can still be seen, but it's marked as resolved. So that's the difference between resolving a comment or a series of comments, which would be kind of like a conversation or a discussion, and deleting it. If I resolve it, it's still viewable. If I delete it, it's gone. In addition to comments, I can also use simple notes. So for example, I want to add a note here reminding myself or others to check on this information about Janae. So having selected that cell, I'll just right-click and choose New Note. Now notice there's also New Comment there, so that's another alternate way to insert a comment. But this time I don't want a comment, I want a note. So I get a pop-up that looks similar to a Post-it note, and I'll just type in a message to myself or anyone else that sees this spreadsheet. At this point, I can click away from the note and it's hidden, but I can see that there is a note in this cell, which is indicated by this little red triangle in the corner of the cell, which is similar to this purple shape that indicates there's a comment in a cell. If I decide I want to remove the note, I can just right-click on the cell and choose Delete Note, or I could edit the note. So comments and notes can be very helpful in Excel. They don't affect the data, they don't change the data, but it's a way to remind yourself or others about key elements of your data or your spreadsheet. Now, there are times when you may want to print the notes or comments that you've created. How would you do that? To print them, you would go to the Page Layout tab, go to the Page Setup group, and click this Launcher button or Launch button. When you click that, you get some options. You would just go to Sheet and look for this setting, Comments and Notes. Right now it says none. If you choose as displayed on sheet, then only notes would be displayed, or you can choose at end of sheet, and then both comments and notes should be displayed in the print. Let's try it out with Print Preview. You can see here's my data, but at the very bottom of the printout, here's my note. It says it's for cell D9, and here's my threaded comment associated with cell B17. I'm going to click this back arrow to get back into my spreadsheet. Okay, the next skill you need to learn is how to set up a watch window to help you find or avoid errors in your worksheet. Let's say as I'm building this 2024 employee list and I'm making some adjustments, making sure it's accurate, maybe I'm relying on at least some of the data from 2023 to help me do that. And so I might be jumping back and forth between these two cells as I compare the data and make necessary adjustments. Well, there's something I can do to help me with that so that I don't have to just eyeball the data here and then either change it or keep it here on this new spreadsheet. What I could do is set up a watch window. I'm going to start by going to the Formulas tab and looking in the Formula Auditing group, and there we have a button called Watch Window. When I click it, I get this pop-up titled Watch Window, and I can use this to watch a part of my spreadsheet or my workbook. So I'm going to click to add a watch. It says, select the cells that you would like to watch the value of. Now Excel has made a guess as to what I would want to watch. And I could just click Add to go with that, but in this case, I want to click this button and then to go to the sheet and the range of data that I want to watch. And in this case, I'm just going to watch the first 15 results here on the 2023 employee list. I'll release the mouse button, and you can see that that range of data is selected and described here in this Add Watch dialog box. Now I can click this arrow again, click Add, and that range of data that's here on the 2023 employee list has been added to my watch window. It doesn't matter what tab or spreadsheet I'm on, I'll always be able to look at this watch window so that I can kind of peer through this window, look into it, and see, in this case, a different spreadsheet, or it could just be a different part of the same spreadsheet. When you're working with a lot of data, it's very common that you'll be working on one part of a spreadsheet or workbook, and the work that you do is affecting another part of the workbook or spreadsheet. And so how nice is this to be able to look through a window and see a distant part of the workbook or worksheet. Now this watch window can be resized. I can use the corners to make it bigger. I can double click between any two columns to make the column wider so that you can see the data better. And let's look at the data that's displayed. First, I have the name of the workbook. Then I have the specific sheet in that book. that's being displayed in the window. So the 2023 employee list. Next, I can see each cell. So cell A1, and what's in cell A1? The letters ID. What's in cell A2? Well, the number 1, and so on. As I browse down my watch window, notice that I can see even the formulas that are being used in those cells. So in E5, for example, we have a number of 2,268.75, but it's actually a formula that's producing that number. So one of the benefits of using a watch window is that you can do more than just look at far-flung sections of your spreadsheet or workbook, but you can also see exactly what is in the cell. Yes, numbers in many cases, but also the formulas. So it's a good way to check your work and to kind of audit it and make sure that you're not making mistakes. When you're done using the watch window, you can just click this button to hide it. And then if you need it again later on, you can just click the watch window button again. In addition to watch windows, other tools we have to help us with formula auditing can be found here in the formula auditing group that's on the formulas tab. We have the option to trace precedence. As soon as I clicked that, Excel looked at the cell that I had selected, and you can see it's showing me how this number was produced. It's tracing its origin, cell C5, multiplied by cell D5. So now I know the precedence that led to this result in E5. Now what if, instead of this result, what if the precedence showed the line going down here, or down and then up? That could certainly be an indication of an error in my data. In addition to tracing precedence, I can also trace dependence. What other cells are dependent on the data in this cell, E5? We can see the taxes to be paid is dependent partially on the income number. And if we browse all the way down the spreadsheet here, we can see that totals, average, highest, lowest, and number of employees are also dependents of the number here. They're all affected by the number that's produced here because of the formula that's in that cell and its precedence. If I want to, I can remove the arrows that have been produced. But if I click trace precedence again, they come back. Trace descendants, again, they come back. Other formula auditing tools I have include show formulas. When I click there, you can see what happens. Instead of showing the results of formulas, I see the formulas themselves. So these cells now show me exactly what's in the formula bar for each cell. So I click here, the formula bar contents are here, and they're also here. It's just that they're color-coded differently here in the cell. I'm going to toggle show formulas off, and I think I'll remove the arrows. Next, let's look at error checking. When I click error checking, Excel is going to do a quick check to make sure there are no error codes in the data. If there are, it will show them to me so that I can address them. In addition to that, we have a drop-down arrow that we can use to trace the error itself so that we can see why that error came to be. And then finally, if you select a cell that has a formula in it, like this one does, you can then click Evaluate Formula. It brings up the formula, and you can click to evaluate the formula. As it says here, by evaluating the formula, I'm able to see the result of the underlined expression. So this formula produces this result. If I click Evaluate again, it evaluates the next part of the formula, and so on. If I click Restart, I can also step into the formula more, or I can step further out of the formula. I'm going to click Close, but I hope you can see that by adding comments and notes, by using watch windows, and by using the other formula auditing options, we can help prevent or identify potential problems, mistakes, errors in our spreadsheets and workbooks. In this final section of Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course, we're going to add to your printing options toolbox. If you watched Excel for Beginners, the complete course, you learned about some printing options and features, but let's add to those. For this section, I'm going to switch over here to the 2022 employee list, and I'm going to click here on the File tab to bring up Print, and at this point, I could simply click the Print button to print my spreadsheet. But there are times when you do this and you look at the preview here at the right that you might say to yourself, I don't want to print it this way. I don't want it to look the way it looks here. So what can you do about that? One thing you could do is go into your workbook and go to the Page Layout tab here in the Page Setup group and you can specify the margins that you want for your pages when you print. So this is the normal margins, but you could switch to narrow margins so that more data can fit onto one page, or you could go to wide margins. That would result in less data being able to fit on the page. You can also set up custom margins here. I'm going to cancel out of that. You can also change the orientation of the printed page. You can see that I have mine set to be landscape. In many cases in Excel, that's a good idea. If you have a lot of columns, it may be difficult or impossible to fit those with a portrait orientation without making the data tiny. So you may need to switch to landscape. But if you want, you can switch back to portrait. And now when I go to File, Print, here in the preview, you can see the page is now in portrait view. I'm going to click back. We can also click on size to change the size of the paper that we're going to print onto. Here's the default, but you could certainly switch to a different printer size. You could also specify the print area. This is a great feature. To use this feature, I would click and drag to highlight the area that I want to print, and notice that some of my data is still hidden because it's filtered. I have some filters applied here, and so there are some rows that are getting skipped. And that's okay, but I just want you to be aware of it. But now that I've clicked and dragged to select the area that I would like to print, I can go up here to the Page Layout tab in the Page Setup group and click on Print Area and Set Print Area. So now, instead of Excel worrying about all of the data on the sheet, when I click on File, Print, all Excel is doing is showing me a print preview of the area that I selected for printing. I'll click back and I'm going to clear the print area. We also have some page break options. You can insert page breaks, remove page breaks, reset all page breaks if you'd like. In addition to these tools that we have in Page Layout, Page Setup, we also have a little button here in the lower right corner called Page Break Preview. And when you click on that, Excel shows you how the printing is going to go if you keep all the settings as they are. So right now, all of my data could fit onto one page. So that's probably a good thing. But if I wanted to, I could click and drag this blue line that's here at the right, drag it to the left, and I could say, I don't really need the chart, maybe, and I could stop there. So now, this is page 1. Now you can also go the other direction. I could make page 1 extend all the way over here to column X. And so Page Break Preview is a good way to solve printing problems. If you have something that's crucial that it be included on the printed page, activate Page Break Preview, click the blue line, and drag it so that everything that needs to be printed on a particular page is included. I'm going to click back here on the normal view to get out of Page Break Preview, and I'll browse over here to the left. And there's one more print setting or option that I want you to be aware of, and that is there are times when you want to print not the results of a formula, but the actual formulas in the spreadsheet. To do that, hold the Control key on the keyboard and tap the grave accent mark key that's in the upper left corner of your keyboard. Now you can release the Control key, and if you browse over, you can see the formulas are now what is displayed in the cells, not the results of the formulas. At this point, I could go to File, Print, and you'll see that the formulas are going to be printed. Before I do that, though, I'm going to go back to Page Break Preview, and I'm going to adjust the page break to something more reasonable. How about right here? Now I'll switch back to normal view and go to File and Print. And if you look closely, you should now be able to see that formulas are being displayed and not the results of formulas. So with those additional printing options, you now should know and understand the basic printing that we looked at in Excel for Beginners, the complete course, and also these new intermediate level printing options. So congratulations, you've now come to the end of this Excel for Intermediate Users, the complete course. With the skills that you've learned in this intermediate level course, as well as the Excel for Beginners course, you should be able to move forward very successfully using Microsoft Excel. Going forward, I hope you'll want to continually learn more about Microsoft Excel. On my YouTube channel, you'll find many more beginning level tutorials that are short videos that show skills that are not part of this complete course series. You'll also find more intermediate video tutorials and also some advanced Excel tutorials. In the future, I'd like to eventually create an Excel for Advanced Users complete course, so watch for that. Hopefully it'll eventually appear. And please do check out my complete courses for Microsoft Word and PowerPoint. And if you happen to also use Google Drive, including Google Docs, Sheets, and Slides, I have a complete course for those tools as well. But for now, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it to be helpful. If you did, please like, follow, and subscribe. And when you do, click the bell and you'll be notified when I post another video. If you'd like to support my channel, you can do that by clicking the Thanks button below the video, or you could support me through my Patreon account or by buying channel merch, and you'll see information about those options in the description below the video.